one of the things when you start realizing when you work in a hospital, when you're working as a doctor is, and I think it's the same for anyone that has graduated, is that this is your life now, right? Like this is what you do. Welcome back to Subcut, the podcast where we get on the skin of interesting issues that we think medical people will enjoy.
You see what we did there?
I think we'll get better at the intro.
Subcut.
My name's Justin Sung, former doctor.
Hi, I'm Niel Kulkarni. I'm a fourth year medical student this year, 2020. Wow.
Congratulations.
Sure.
So, today there's a few things that I want to talk about. One person had the idea of how I kind of got into this whole non-medical thing. And that's actually something that's really a big topic because when I first quit medicine, because I've been working for just under 2 years, and then when I quit, I was getting messages from people all the time.
Yeah.
Pharmacists. Like,
I was getting messages from people about you.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not even lying.
What were they asking?
Like, how? Why? Like, how can someone even just do that? Like, 6 years is a long time as well, understandably.
Well, for me, it was 9 years because
9 years,
7 years of with the 1 year of research.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got a lot of messages from a lot of people, a lot of pharmacists. That just shows that a lot of pharmacists were not satisfied with their jobs. I think. Anyway, and most people who are, I guess, junior, you know, I'm talking sort of second, third year, maybe fourth year medical students, people that aren't medical, you know, they'll be like, why, you know,
Right.
But I guess my peer group was older, so they're house officers, they're registrars, they're, you know, nurses that have been working for a number of years and stuff, or pharmacists that have been working for a number of years. The messages that they asked me were never why, because they know why.
Right.
I think every health professional knows why.
Yeah.
And the question was how. Their question was, how did I actually quit and do something else, and what was the kind of pathway there? And so I want to outline a little bit about the story of how I actually got into doing all this in the first place. And I think there will be something that people can learn and take away and maybe even apply to themselves, because I think a lot of people that will be listening, maybe not now, but eventually will have a feeling of like, maybe medicine isn't for me if they're in medicine. If they're not, then maybe it'll give an insight into what they're doing in their own lives. I recently talked to a former engineer who doesn't like doing that kind of work anymore and is doing his own thing. And he actually had very similar kind of experiences with being, I suppose, getting into a career and realizing that maybe it's not really suited for the personality as much and looking for other things. So do you know actually this story? Have I told you before?
I actually don't know
how
the
I
full
got
story as
into
well.
business, like the very, very beginning.
I mean, I think I'll let you do the talking and stuff for the most part, but I think lots of tutoring, and then you started just thinking it's going to make
It goes way before that.
Way before that
It goes
even.
way
No,
before
I
that.
don't know.
Okay, so there's this game called Adventure
Oh
Quest.
god! Oh my gosh! You're kidding.
Do you know this game?
I think I played it for like
There's
weeks, and then I
on
just got over
There's
it.
ads on this game everywhere, and it's actually it's a really common. It's a browser game,
Right.
and it's really crappy. And they have all these.
Disappointed.
Honestly, it's actually like I can't call it crappy because I played it a lot. I really
you
love
did.
this game, and I was really young, and I played this game religiously. I played it a lot, and while I was playing this game, I was like, man, I really wish I could get like these special weapons or like find like cheats to the game or something. So I was looking up cheats to this game on Google, and I came across this forum, and I must have been, how old would I have been at that time? Probably like 11
Oh,
or
sorry,
so.
yeah,
Yeah. Like, it was in my 6th year of medical school.
yeah.
No, so I was around 11, I think, and I found this forum online, and it was basically this forum of people that are kind of just talking about how to cheat in different games and like share it. Like it was one of those like raw indie piracy forums way back in the day before you know people were like torrenting everything.
Yeah.
And I got like really involved in that little tiny community, and I spent heaps of time on these forums. And in each of these forums, there's actually a graphics area, and anyone that's been on these forums will know that there's always this graphics area because under everyone's post, there's always this thing called a sig or a signature, and it's pretty much this little image, like a 350 by 120 pixel image.
Okay.
that represents like their little identity. It's got their username on it. It's got like a cool image.
And that's where they put the comments and stuff. And they're like, every time they comment, that icon will come up.
Yeah, that little thing comes
like
up underneath it. Well, it's not like a profile picture because it's underneath the post. It's like a signature, in an email, but it's an image. So everyone on these forums has these things called SIGs. And there's a high demand, at least it used to be, I don't know if it's still the case, but there's a high demand for people to get SIGs from the people that are in the graphic sections of these forums. So it's like a little micro community that forms. And so I started getting into Photoshop through this forum when I was like 11 years old.
Okay.
And then that forum got shut down actually, or the admin had some random personal issues. And the people that were on that shifted to this other forum, which was actually really large. It had like 100,000 members on it. It was really active. It was one of the largest kind of underground piracy forums in the day. And I was the graphics moderator of that. So I would just spend all my time like on Photoshop doing these SIGs for people and making all this Photoshop stuff.
I'm so intrigued in how this is going to lead to this business.
Yeah, well, so I used to do that, and then that forum got shut down, and then I moved on to another forum, quite a big one called Where's BB, and actually I was a graphics moderator on that forum as well. So I just spent like my entire childhood and a lot of my teenage years just on these forums, spending hours and hours a day just Photoshopping things for people and entering like these art competitions.
Right.
And eventually that led me to get commissions for art related things. So I started designing billboards and pamphlets and brochures and websites and things. And that led me to doing website development work and website design stuff freelance for many years since I was around 13 or 14 onwards. And then fast forward several years and I'm in uni, and there was another tutoring organization that doesn't actually exist anymore, but I was actually part of that organization. And I did one of the things I did was website work for that. And at that job, I actually learned all my basic business skills because I was one of the only employees that was there regularly. And so what I was doing all this design work, that was actually the thing that got me the job that allowed me to get business acumen. And that's what taught me most of my foundational business knowledge that was enough for me to start, getting things going. And so it was like this random convoluted series of things where like I just started with this game of Adventure Quest, and it really quite linearly led me towards this, like all these business opportunities later in life.
Yeah.
And then while I was in medical school at that time, it's not really the case anymore, which is weird, but at the time I was kind of the only arts person in medical school. Yeah. So I was designing stuff for a lot of the medical associations and organizations in New Zealand at the time. So conferences run by various organizations. Like even now, if certain conferences, there'll be like a banner or like a sign. It's that's like the thing that I designed 5-6 years ago. And so that got me a lot of my sort of business networks. And then I started tutoring just to make some money. And then that's a story that you're probably more familiar with, where I was tutoring a lot, and I created justinthetutor.com, and then I turned it into a charity, and then that kind of developed and rolled out as a social enterprise. And that's like kind of a separate story, but so it actually all started with this thing. So moral of the story, I think, for anyone is just, if you're young, and by young I mean like if you're like under 30, 35, just do heaps of stuff that you're really interested in, and just like get hobbies and just get good at random things that you enjoy. Just do stuff, and you never know where it's going to lead you. Like I never would have anticipated that, now over 10 years ago, right, like 12, 13 years ago, that me designing things, making forum signatures for random people on the internet was going to get me a job when I was 18, learning business acumen. That became the foundation for me creating a company and being able to do that, I suppose, in medical school and all of that sort of stuff. So that's kind of the story of how I actually got into business. Yeah.
Well, that's how you like got into it. But at the same time, you were doing med school, and you graduated and you were a doctor, and you were still running the company itself. Like, and I'm still curious as to why, and you could probably add that as well in your explanation. But like, I'm like, where was the tipping point as to you like coming to the decision to stop your medical practice and go straight for this company?
Well, that's the thing, right? Is that
at what point did those reasons like turn the tables? You know what I mean?
There's a very clear series of events for that as well. Right. So, have you read House of God? You haven't.
You're recommending it to me.
I recommend it to everyone.
Yeah.
House of God, I think, is the quintessential kind of medical book that kind of exists. I think everyone should sort of read it. And one of the things when you start realizing when you work in a hospital, when you're working as a doctor is, and I think it's the same for anyone that has graduated, is that this is your life now, right? Like this is what you do. And most people go into medicine without any idea about what they're getting themselves into.
Myself included.
Yeah. Like,
and yourself included.
And myself included. Yeah. You know, like it's just crazy, right? Like you start from high school, you have this vague idea about what being a doctor is, which is really based on very little reality. Like most of it, most of it is based on rumors you hear about the career, right? Yeah. So it's kind of like you're willing to spend like your life, like the only life that you've got, you're willing to spend that life and all that money and time and effort and sacrifice and all of that sort of stuff for a rumor that you've heard about this career. And like people will commit to that without even going so far as to actually, like some people won't even Google what it's like to be a doctor, you know? Like this is sort of, you would assume would be basic sort of stuff if they were making an informed decision. But I guess the idea is that there's so much emphasis on committing to a decision.
Right. And
as opposed to making a good one.
Pressure as well.
Yeah.
That people just skip those steps.
Yeah. I would make sure that my kid does not decide on a career until after high school. Like take a gap year. Yeah. Don't even go to uni. Like my kid's going to have to convince me that he wants to go to uni for a specific reason. Right. Otherwise I'm just like, no, don't waste your time. Yeah. Don't be like everyone else. Yeah. So a lot of people will go into medicine with that kind of mindset and mentality where they don't know what they're getting themselves into. And then it's just short-term goal after short-term goal, right? It's just, okay, well, I need to get into medical school. Just need to study. Then they get into medical school and it's like, I've got exam, module, exam, whatever it is. And you just go exam after exam and you just continue doing that. And then you're a clinical student, you're in the hospital, you just keep doing that again and again. And so you get to this point where you have reached so many short-term goals that you've actually somehow managed your way through medical school. Right. And then you graduate. And then you have the opportunity to pursue more short-term goals, studying, training, learning the job, etc., applying for a training program, blah, 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 all that sort of stuff. But now there's a difference. The difference is now that there's a price tag associated with your time because you're getting paid. Yeah. And so when you get paid, you start thinking, how much is this time worth for me? And so the thing is that the hospitals are managed horribly. Okay. Yeah. And like, you know, people listening to this, if, you know, they're not working in the healthcare sector, are never really going to understand or be able to fathom how bad it is. Now, I have friends that work in a lot of different industries, right? Like business, finance, marketing, like working in multiple different countries and multiple different sectors. None of it is as bad as healthcare. I can promise you. There is no industry I've ever even heard of that is managed as poorly as healthcare is, right? The disconnect between managerial staff versus the clinical workers is just like colossal. It's so phenomenal that it's almost like it should have its own syndrome associated with it. It's just, it's a mess. It's a total mess. And I hated working in it. But as one of the results of kind of poor management and organizational things is that they're always lacking staff in certain areas. And actually, it's not really a shortage of doctors. It's a shortage of like organizational skill because there are doctors that can do it. It's just that they weren't organized. Yeah. And there's a lot of reasons behind that as well, which we're not going to go into. Sure. But at the end of pretty much every single day, when you finish your shift, you will get this message. And that message will say, do you want to pick up this additional shift, you know, at the end of your day? And you'll get paid, you know, an additional rate. And that additional rate is usually a little bit more than you'd get paid normally. So when you work out hourly wage for doctors before tax, right, just for rostered hours, it's like somewhere along the lines of like 30s to 40s an hour. Wow. But then when you work out actual hours worked, because
they do, yeah,
because rostered hours is never gonna be the same as actual hours worked. Like it's never, because the roster is made to be the bare minimum, and sometimes it's even shorter than the minimum. Like for example, your whole team will start at 7 a.m., but your roster doesn't start till 8 a.m. Right. Like it's not possible to get there at 8 a.m. Like you'd miss a significant important part of the day, and your team would hate you. It would just be unacceptable. Like, but there's no way you would get there at 8 a.m. Yeah. So it just means that every single day you work an additional hour at the beginning that's not rostered, and the same at the end of the day for things as well.
You can't just like leave your patient there. See, I gotta go. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, even that, like for example, your roster might end at 4:30. Right. The handover for the evening staff begins at 4:30. Like it's not possible to end at the same time as the meeting begins, unless your entire patient handover to the evening staff is like less than 1 second.
And you don't get paid for that 7 to 8 a.m. session or that 4:30.
Yeah, you don't get. So that's not included in your pay. So when you work out actual hours worked and pay, your pay per hour ends up being around the 20s. It's more around the 20s.
Right.
And if you're in a really busy run where you're really stretched, then it will end up being even lower than that.
Yeah,
so when you work out after tax, cash in hand, when you're busy, it ends up being sort of like $11 to $15 an hour that you're making cash in hand.
And this is, this is so surprising as well, because everyone keeps on saying doctors, very good pay, very good pay.
Yeah.
I'm sure you might get to that stage.
It's good compared to a lot of jobs, and there's security and there's stability. So, but it's not really like, I mean, if you go into the medicine for money, it just means that either you are incredibly disillusioned about what medicine pays, or your standard of good money is very low. Like if you really want to make a lot of money, you don't do medicine.
No.
You can potentially be making a lot if you do like pure private practice surgery and stuff.
Sure.
15,
but you still have to
15
get
20 years after you graduate,
Right,
we're talking about. But actually, it's not a really relevant concern.
Mm.
And you kind of have 15 years of a crap life just so that you can be making big bucks at the end of it by working in private practice. Like it doesn't. It's just.
Is that poor hourly rate? Is that only for your PGY 1 to 3 years or something like that, or
It's pretty poor hourly rate for like most of your
registrar years as well?
Yeah, so most of your training until at least you become a consultant, and then you get paid a wage that is kind of like reasonable, that you would expect minimum to be paid at that school level. But I mean, if you compare it to like a standard corporate job doing anything, scale is basically the same. So it's you get shafted in a lot of ways, and one of these particular ways that you get shafted is that at the end of your shift you will get this text saying, can you pick up this other shift? So for example, the evening staff isn't available, and you'll get this message. And so instead of getting paid, I don't know, $11 to $15 cash in hand, now you get to take home $25 cash in hand per hour. So you can do an additional 5 or 6 hours of work at the end of the day, which means that you're going to go home at around 10 or 11 p.m., right? You're going to go to sleep at around 11 to 12. And then you have to wake up the next morning.
You have to be in hospital at
7 or 7:30 or whenever you're starting, you have to be in hospital. So you're not getting much sleep. You're gonna be tired. And the other thing is you've probably got a long day that week as well, or you've already done one. So you've got another 10 p.m., 16 hour, 17 hour shift either coming up or when you've already finished. So what that means is that you're really ruining your whole week because you're gonna be so damn tired. You might even be working the weekend or whatever the situation is. But
night shifts might be coming through as well.
So in that weekend, you're not going to get enough rest because you're just so tired as well. So what ends up happening is that you do this, you could pick up this shift and ruin that day and the week and cancel your evening plans or whatever it is. And then you get to take home an additional, I don't know, $200-$300, right, for doing that. And so a lot of people, especially if you're in high school, you might be thinking, oh my God, $200-$300 for an additional day's worth of work. Well, trust me, it's not really worth it when like your quality of life is actually being impacted. And when you make enough money to actually get by and pay your bills and all of that sort of stuff, the value that money provides you is not really worth the rest and recuperation and relaxation and time that you spend with friends and family, which is just incredibly rare sometimes. It's just not worth giving it up. So you have to actually ask yourself a different question, which is, what is my time actually worth? And so when you ask yourself the question of what is my time actually worth, you start comparing it to what would I rather be doing?
Yeah.
And this is what I was doing. So I'd get this text and I'd think, am I going to pick up the shift? And I look around at my peers and they're like, no one's going to pick this. I'm going home. Screw that. Most people don't pick it up. And you think, well, would I rather be doing this or would I rather be at home relaxing or working on the company, which is what I normally would do when I got home?
Yeah.
The answer is I would rather be doing something else.
Yeah.
And so then it gets to the point where it's like, well, I'm getting paid more than I'm normally getting paid. And I'm saying that it's not really worth my time to be doing it. Like the work that I'm doing.
Yeah.
And personally, I actually found on-call work after hours much more enjoyable than daytime work because you're more independent and you get to think about things more. There's less supervision, but at the same time, you get more freedom and you get to be more of a doctor because you're diagnosing and
that was at what stage? House officer years or
yeah. I mean, straight away.
Straight away.
Yeah. I mean, I worked a 12-day stretch, 100-something hours over like 140 hours over 2 weeks. My first 2 weeks of working. So you get experience with this straight away. And I really enjoyed my on-call shifts. But even the shifts that I enjoyed, I was saying that it wasn't really worth it. Like I didn't really want to do it. And then the day shifts, which I enjoy even less, why am I even doing that then? Like I'm saying that the work is not even enough to be paid more for, yet I'm deciding to do it because of what? Like I'd rather be doing something else. You know, if someone were to give me the question, and this is something I ask students all the time, is like, if there's something you enjoy, don't think of it in terms of relative to something you don't enjoy. Think of it in terms of things you actually enjoy.
Right.
Like, would you rather be doing this or hanging out with your friends? You know, I would rather be, you know, if my friends ask me to come out, sometimes I'd rather just be working on the company. I'd rather be building stuff. I'd rather be doing entrepreneurial stuff. I'd rather be teaching like this.
Sure.
I'd rather be coaching. Like there's certain things that I'd rather do sometimes. There's very rarely a time where I'd rather go to work and do the doctoring work personally. And this is not obviously universal, right? Just for me, I would have rather have not gone to work.
Right.
If you know, if there was some crazy snowstorm and I got a message saying you don't have to come into work, that's good news for me.
Yeah.
I would interpret that as good. It's like not going to school.
Yeah.
Right. So I didn't really enjoy that. So the prospect of spending my literal only life toiling away at that just became a little bit outrageous. And I'm sort of funnily enough, I'm not a very risk-takey person for a lot of things, which is kind of interesting, I know, because of like what I do entrepreneurially. But actually, for me, it's because I thought my primary outcome is happiness and satisfaction in my life. Like if I have a fulfilling and happy life that's financially viable, that's a win. I thought it was a riskier move for me to stay in medicine because I thought it was a higher risk for me to find fulfillment and happiness in medicine. And so
it's a higher risk. It
was high risk. It was high risk.
Right.
So it's, you know, the idea was if I can maintain financial stability, if the finances aren't that big of a deal, and when you start working as a doctor, you really quickly realize the money is limited value. When you've got enough money, it doesn't create more happiness. When you don't have enough money, it becomes a barrier. But you know, when there's a minimum amount of money there, more money doesn't really add to more happiness. And so it didn't really matter for me at a certain stage, as long as I was able to kind of financially be viable for my own life. Yeah. It was more important that I was getting a fulfilling career. And so the work that I was doing, which wasn't fulfilling for me at the time, it was a high risk move for me to stay in that career. I might as well move to something that's financially higher risk, but actually ultimately lower risk for me and what's important in my life, which is to be happy. Yeah. Because I had enough confidence that I could create financial stability out of it, at least in some form. And so that series of kind of getting that text every shift and questioning why I'm actually coming back the next day for this work that I'd rather like not be there doing it. Or there'll be times where I'd enjoy it, you know, like, you know, maybe if I'm at work for 9 hours, then of those 9 hours, maybe 4 or 5 of them are enjoyable, which is pretty good. But then there'll be times where like the whole day is just not enjoyable. There's 1 hour a day that's enjoyable. Or the only parts of the day that are enjoyable is when I'm actually working with my team or with my friends. And that's kind of a social aspect that I could get really at any other job. Yeah. And it wasn't like coffee time after a award round. Yeah. It's like the highlight of the day. You know, it just says something about the job when you're like really reluctant to go to your clinic or whatever it is. And especially when your management team is like completely non-appreciative to the absolute human maximum potential. And also like shafting you at every possible corner. You find shafts that you didn't even know existed where you're getting shafted. You know, like it's just so many possible ways that of dissatisfaction just being bred into it. You really have to kind of find your own satisfaction in it. And I looked for it and I just couldn't find it. And at the same time, I had a company that I could transition into that I did find satisfaction in. Yeah. So it became kind of an easy move for me. But a lot of people ask me how I was able to transition into it. And that really in itself is a whole other story of how you can actually
get the balls.
Not get the balls, because again, it's just a priority, right? It's just the risk of happiness versus the risk of income, which is more important. So
I say get the balls because I feel like, and this is for people that are in med school right now, some of my own friends and stuff are deferring the year or they're pursuing their own sort of other passions and stuff. But like, there's such a huge stigma, understandably as well, that once you're in, because you try so hard to get in as well, that once you're in the system until the very end, until you graduate, until you like go into a training program, until you become a consultant for the rest of your life.
Yeah, but the stigma is created by
the people anyway.
Yeah, but like it's the stigma isn't created within the medical field as much as it is from the rest of society.
Yeah,
you know,
right. Yeah,
they're afraid of their parents. They're afraid of their non-medical friends. You know,
oh, you're not a doctor anymore. Oh,
yeah. Why would you do that?
Yeah,
and it's just like, oh, you were never a doctor,
right?
So it's like, screw your opinion.
Right.
So, you know, you wouldn't really hear that from. You know, you could get curiosity. You wouldn't get stigma out of any other job. If you heard that your friend was working at a bank and they decided to go into like something else instead, like real estate, you wouldn't be like, whoa, you quit working at a bank? Like in their head, like, what's wrong with you? You know, like, you know, like you wouldn't get that for any other career, but it's just because there's a saint phenomenon of medicine, right? You have to be the perfect person to do medicine, and it's just a really toxic culture. It's actually the same with social
overrated,
enterprise.
man. It's so overrated. Yeah.
Like if it's the same with, you know, owning a charity and things, is that people think that you need to be the perfect person that has no self-interest at all. It's like, I don't want to be personally
saint-like. It doesn't
I
mean
have no interest in being a saint, you know? Like I want to just do what makes me happy, and also what brings me a lot of fulfillment is helping people.
Sure.
So it's just, you know, it's a completely...
That should be enough.
Yeah, it should be. And like, I'm not going to go to a point where like, for example, if a student really needs help and we can't afford to give them a scholarship,
right?
I'm not going to take that money out of my pay when I'm already barely scraping through to give them that scholarship. You know, like I'm going to look after myself first and keep myself good so that I can do what I want to do, which just happens to be helping people, which is societally acceptable. So I think the stigma, and I really encourage anyone that wants to take a year off or defer to just do it. I highly, strongly, absolutely encourage it. If anyone's listening to this and are on the fence about taking a year off, and the thing that you're worried about is, what will my parents say? What will my friends say? Right? Just screw them and just do it. It's just, there's no black and white.
And I think like that, the screw them part requires its own sort of session of podcast as well. But like, I mean, we can go to the whole sort of like, it's your life, do what you want. You know, like, parents are old school and everything like that, and they don't understand, they don't get it, they're on the system, not in society right now, at least in the one that you're part of, really, that you're attributing to.
But it's more than that.
It's, there's so much to...
Yeah, it's not just that they're not in this system or that they don't get it. That's not really... That's true. That's true, is that it's a different generation, it's a different era and things like that as well.
Yeah.
But it's that it doesn't matter. It's that even if they knew, it doesn't matter. Even if they knew what was up, it wouldn't matter. You can be open-minded and accept their opinion and see and help that make an informed decision. But if you think that there's a certain decision that's best for your life, and you've open-mindedly considered it, and you've got good critical thinking, and you've balanced it, and you think, this is what I need to do, you know yourself and your situation, right? And most of the time, parents and family have a very, very limited scope of the situation, especially when it comes to medicine, right? Parents of doctors know, even them, they know very little about what medicine is really like, right? They just don't know. They don't know what it's like. Just like how they could have worked, you know, whatever job, you know, they could have been a cleaner, or they could have worked at a store or whatever. There are nuances to the job that other people just don't know about it. And medicine more so. There's just so much mystery and mystique around it, and so much romanticization and bias about it. If you know what it's like, and you know what your situation is, and you know how you feel about it, unless someone else has 100% understanding and is giving you advice from that point of view, at the end of the day, their decision and their opinion is ultimately inconsequential. And this is something that I really want students to understand, is that if you get into medicine because you want to make your parents happy, fast forward 30 to 40 years, your parents are now dead. And you have to live in this career. You spent your whole life making them happy. By the way, they probably weren't even made happy, because if they're the type of parents that have to be happy because you got into medicine, then they're just going to find another thing to bitch about, that you're not the surgeon, you're not the best surgeon, you're not working at the best hospital, you're not the head of department, you're not a professor, your research wasn't better than someone else's, right? They're always going to find something that they're not proud of you for. If you're just constantly living to have that expectation, you're going to have a crappy life. You're going to be miserable. You're going to be suffering under the expectations and pressures of other people, just because you weren't able to, for a brief period of time, or maybe even a few years, take that discomfort that comes with them not really understanding your life decision. And you know what? They're a goddamn adult. They will deal with it. They can get over it. Oh my God, instead of my son or daughter not becoming a doctor, they decided to do some other like job that's also making them happy, that's financially viable as well. OMG, like time to suicide my whole ancestral tree. You know, it's like they're so dramatic about that. They'll get used to it. They can deal with it. They're a damn adult. Like that's their problem at that stage. It's not your problem. You don't have to take the responsibility of your whole descendants, you know, and to be a doctor if you don't want to do it. If you do something that makes you happy, that's financially viable, that's stable and secure, and fits what you need in your life, you win. And when you win, your parents will see that and they're happy for that, and they'll understand it eventually, and they'll win.
And there's a whole process for them to get to that stage, which the kid can be part of as well, which the child of the parent that's feeling these ways can be part of as well. And it's like, it's starting that process of change and the adjustment period, and like going through slight discomforts bit by bit, and these slight conversations where, you know, they might not be all for, like, I don't know, it's topical right now, abortion, or like they might not feel really, really comfortable with the idea of homosexualism and stuff like that in that way. But like, this is from their background, like ethnic background in that way. And I'm speaking from the others, tutees and stuff and other ones that I've got. But it's like, you talk to them and you explain the way society is now and the place that you've grown up and everything like that. And bit by bit, they do understand. They're not completely like horrible people. Eventually, it takes time, but like you said, it's a little bit of discomfort for a lifetime's worth of avoiding resentment.
Exactly, yeah, avoiding resentment, because it's inevitable that if you live your life based on their expectations and you feel crap about it, you're gonna start resenting them. Like if you're kind of in your early 20s, right? That's that transition period where there's that big conflicts between independence and parental influence, especially if you're Asian. And you have to recognize that actually you need to be making decisions that will create conflict and discomfort that they may not approve of. But you legitimately think that this is, you know, not impulsively, but rationally and you know, genuinely a good decision and direction for your life that you think is well thought through. And maybe you'll make mistakes, but that it's your mistake to make.
Exactly. And you suffer the consequences of your own decision.
And you take ownership of it.
Right.
If you're mature enough to do that, and then you have a decision that's going to create conflict, you need to create conflict. Not only should you not avoid it, you should be making that conflict, because, you know, this is the thing, is that parents will always see their, you know, a little baby, right? And when they're in that teenage kind of 20s phase, it's transitioning into, you are developing your own sense of identity. And the way that you behave is going to set a precedent for the adult relationship that will form. Which is why there are a lot of 40 and 50-year-old parents of children who, with their own parents, they have a horrible relationship with, because they've just figured out exactly the type of barrier to put in place to avoid having types of conversations that they don't know how to handle, because they were too afraid to have that discomfort, or that discomfort wasn't overcome. Now, not every parent's going to be understanding, obviously. Not every parent is going to be able to deal with it or understand it. But at the end of the day, there is a certain priority. And at least in one situation, there is the potential for a good relationship, for mutual understanding and respect and independence and freedom and all of that sort of stuff. And still love and care and a family relationship. At least there's a potential for that in one situation, whereas the other situation is like inevitable resentment.
Right.
And that gap.
Disconnect,
being there.
Thanks for tuning in to Subcut. If you guys have any suggestions for content, please make sure you send it through.
You can get in touch and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, or find us on our website at jttmid.com/subcut.
Subcut is a podcast brought to you by JTT. If you or anyone you know is interested in a career in medicine, make sure to get in touch and check us out at jttmid.com.